I need you to find the article on your desk. We're going to go through it. We're talking about cell division. Yes, I am recording the class for people who are not here. So, intro to cell division.
Hey Tiffany, hey Brogan, hey Giovanna, hey Emma.
All right, follow along with me. You should have this article in front of you. Intro to cell division. So where do cells come from? Sometimes you accidentally bite your lip or skin your knee, but in a matter of days, the wound heals. Is it magic, or is there another explanation? Every day, every hour, every second, one of the most important events in life is going on in your body. Cells are dividing. When cells divide, they make new cells. A single cell divides to make 2 cells, and then these 2 cells divide to make 4 cells, and so on. We call this process cell division and cell reproduction because new cells are formed when old cells divide. The ability of cells to divide is unique for living organisms. Why do cells divide? Cells divide for many reasons. For example, when you skin your knee, cells divide to replace old, dead, or damaged cells. Cells also divide so living things can grow. When organisms grow, it isn't because cells are getting larger. Organisms grow because cells are dividing to produce more and more cells. In human bodies, nearly 2 trillion cells divide every single day. You and I began as a single cell, or what you would call an egg. By the time you are an adult, you will have trillions of the cells. That number depends on the size of the person, but biologists put that number around 37 trillion cells. Yes, that is trillion with a T. In cell division, the cell that is dividing is called the parent cell. The parent cell divides into 2 daughter cells. The process then repeats in what is called the cell cycle. Cells regulate their division by communicating with each other using chemical signals from special proteins called cyclins. These signals act like switches to tell cells when to start dividing and later when to stop dividing. It is important for cells to divide so you can grow and so your cuts heal. It is also important for cells to stop dividing at the right time. If a cell cannot stop dividing when it is supposed to stop, this can lead to a disease called cancer. Some cells, like skin cells, are constantly dividing. We need to continuously make new skin cells to replace the old skin cells we lose. Did you know that we lose 30,000 to 40,000 dead skin cells every minute? That means we lose around 50 million cells every day. This is a lot of skin cells to replace, making cell division in skin cells so important. Other cells, like nerve cells and brain cells, divide much less often. All right, so in your warm-ups, this should be in your back of your notebook. Open it up. So number 1, list 2 reasons that cells divide. Why do cells divide?
To replace old or dead damaged cells.
Good, so to replace old cells. So that's the first thing I need you to write down. Number 1, to replace old cells or to replace damaged cells. So number 1, replace old cells or replace damaged cells. You should have your notebooks out right now. Number 2, how many cells are in your body? Right, 37 trillion. So let's write that down, 37 trillion. 2 reasons we said to replace old cells or replace damaged cells. So we said 37 trillion cells. Does anyone know how many zeros trillion has? 9 is billion. 12. Good job. So 12 zeros. That's a lot of cells. How does a cell know when to start and stop dividing?
It communicates
Using what? To the last paragraph. Yeah, it uses chemical signals from proteins called cyclins. So there are chemical signals. That's how it knows when to start and stop. So number 3, chemical signals tell it when to start and stop. So we're going to be talking about cells dividing, cell division. But first, what I want to do is I want to go over, we're going to do a practice ACT because you guys are taking the ACT Aspire next week. And so what we're going to do is we're going to compare how you did or how you do next week to the beginning of the year when you took it. So I want you to practice so that we get ready for this. So the title of your notes, this is a new section, mitosis. Mitosis. So remember, this is when cells divide, like how we read, okay, in that article. I'm going to show you some pictures of cells dividing so you kind of have an idea of what this looks like, okay? So this is your title. Make sure you have this written, mitosis, at the top here. Yeah. All right, so we're going to look, if we're looking at cells dividing, okay, we have to keep in mind that this is happening all the time, and it's kind of hard to capture on a microscope because you need a really powerful microscope in order to see what's happening, okay? Please pick it up, too.
Okay, thank you.
So here I'm going to show you some clips. Guys, I need you to be quiet. Okay, we're going to look at actual cells dividing. All right, here you go. See those squiggly things? Does anyone know what those are? Nope. Chromosomes inside of a cell.
I was right.
I need you back in your seat.
I can't see.
I'll find a different seat for you then. Sit behind Adam then. So these are chromosomes, okay? Watch what's happening to the chromosomes. Okay, the chromosomes, what's going to happen is they're going to move kind of to the middle of the cell. Now here you go. Ready for it? Wait for it. Okay, so they're going to each side of the cell. Okay, each side of the cell, and look at, we have the cell splitting in half. This is what happens when cells divide. Okay, the DNA goes to each half of the cell, and then the cell divides. Okay, to make new cells. By dividing in half, it makes 2 cells instead of just 1. So if we look at these, this is just a different image. You can see they're dividing. Again, why do we need to have cells divide? We need to have them divide so we can replace the old cells. This is how cells reproduce or copy themselves. Again, here you see all the chromosomes, the little squiggles, the DNA. Okay? So the DNA is going to line up in the middle. And what's going to happen is it's going to divide, pull to either side.
I hope y'all choke or y'all can't.
Okay, so they're going to be pulled to either side. And then watch, the cell's going to divide. It's going to pinch in and divide. So this is exactly how. All right, title of your notes is mitosis. We're going to be talking about cell division, and cell division is called mitosis. I'm recording this for the kids that are not here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you the cells, a picture or a video of cells actually dividing under a microscope. Okay, so we talked about cells dividing in that intro article that we read. So let's look at some pictures or some videos of actual cells dividing. Anyone know what these little squiggles are? Nope. This whole thing's a cell. DNA. So those are the chromosomes or the DNA inside of the cell. Okay, now watch what's going to happen. So they're kind of moving around, and eventually they're going to do something. Here we go. And wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. So half of the DNA, half of the chromosomes are going to one side of the cell. The other half are going to the other side. Okay? This is a cell dividing. When it divides up its chromosomes. Half the DNA goes in one side, half the other. Now, what it does is it actually makes a copy of its DNA. So it has two copies of DNA, and then before it divides, okay? So if it's getting ready to divide, it makes two copies of the DNA, and then one set of the DNA, one copy, goes to one side of the cell, the other copy goes to the other side, and then it divides. And you guys can see that there's this plate forming where it's going to divide here, okay? So again, this is super small underneath a microscope. Here are some cells getting ready to divide here, just a different type of image, and they're just splitting in half, okay? So different types of microscopes can show us different images there. Here's another one. This one's my favorite. So we see a cell, okay? All the little squiggles in the center, those are your chromosomes. So it takes a while. All the chromosomes have to get lined up in the right order because we got to make sure that half are going to be going to one side, the other half are going to go to the other side. And so in a minute, what we're going to end up seeing is we're going to see them divide, or we're going to see the chromosomes move to either side of the cell, and then the cell is actually going to split into two. So here they go, and then what happens is the cell pinches in, and now we have two cells. This is how cells make new cells, okay? So this is called mitosis. So write this definition down. What? Yep, it happens in your cells all the time. You lose like 50 billion cells or 50 million cells every single day. So your cells are dividing all the time. Now we talked a little bit, there are some cells that can't divide, like your brain cells or your spinal cord cells, okay? Those can't divide, so they don't divide ever. There are other cells that divide really, really quickly. So like your skin cells, because you lose lots and lots of skin cells every single day, okay? You might not notice it, but you do. If you've ever, you guys, anyone's parents make them dust? Yeah, like dust the living room, dust the, yeah, dust is mostly old skin cells.
Say if you get paralyzed, your cells don't.
Nope, there is no way to get unparalyzed. So that's why if you get an injury to your spinal cord, you're paralyzed forever because those cells can't divide and make new cells, even though they're damaged.
How do you get paralyzed again?
You get damaged, paralyzed, you get damaged to your spinal cord.
Like you can
Like there's this football player, like
Yeah,
I know you saw that he did a front flip.
Right, so.
Yeah, he did a front flip into the touchdown, and he landed on his neck, and he got like he
Yep.
moved, like his arms were up and his legs were up, but his back was like flat. What do you think playing football? Good. Yeah.
How was he paralyzed?
You do, like, all of the stairs and stuff, and you got like most of all of those, like.
You can't get unparalyzed. You can learn to work with the muscles that you still have left. And if I don't know what his specific condition was, but I haven't really heard of that. So mitosis is the process by which body cells divide. Notice I said body cells here. We have two types of cells in our body. We have body cells and we have reproductive cells, like sex cells, sperm and egg, okay? So body cells, we make an exact copy. Sperm and egg cells or reproductive cells, we don't make an exact copy. Why? Well, think about it. If your parents made an exact copy to make you, you'd look exactly like your parents. That's not the case, okay? Right? You don't look like your siblings, right? Your parents don't make kids that look the exact same every single time.
Then how come there's identical twins?
Okay, unless you're an identical twin, and yes, we will talk about that. Okay? So,
That's weird. You don't know who's who.
body cells. So write this down. This is why we need mitosis. This will be a question at some point on some kind of quiz or test. So why do we need mitosis? Why do we need to divide? We need it to grow. So this is how babies grow. You guys are still growing. Okay? So your cells don't like get bigger. What happens is you just make more cells. So to grow from a baby to an adult, your cells need to divide and make more cells. Now, your cells still divide once you're an adult, but just to replace old cells, not to make you grow. That's why little kids need lots of energy, and they're hungry all the time, especially, you guys, like teenagers. And if you ever notice, when you get older, you don't need to eat as much. So your parents might not eat as much, or your grandparents, because they're not making as many cells because they don't need to grow, right?
But they're adults.
Because that's what happens. If you eat too much, more calories than you need, it stores it as fat, right? And then it increases the amount of fat cells. It makes your fat cells bigger.
More like I have like family members that have like really high what's that thing called?
Metabolism,
Yeah,
high
that.
metabolism.
And like they can eat a whole bunch, and they don't eat anything, and like it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, sometimes there's different genetics that play into weight and everything. But as a general rule, kids need more food than adults, okay? You also need cells or mitosis for repair, to repair stuff. So if you burn the roof of your mouth, it doesn't stay burned forever, right? You get new cells to replace it. Or if you get a paper cut, it doesn't stay a cut forever. You make new skin cells to replace it. Some organisms can regenerate body limbs, right? If you cut off the tail of a lizard or salamander, it can make copies of its tail cells and regrow it back, okay? All right, so when DNA is not dividing, it is a tangled mess. Here's what I need you to write down from this slide. I need you to write down chromatin. Okay, so when DNA is not dividing, when the cell's not dividing, the DNA looks like a tangled mess bunch of yarn. Okay?
How come when you get stitches, it's like the scar is still away? Yeah, I got stitches on my leg and it was scarred.
So scar, when your cells, if you have a really big injury, your cells make skin cells, but they have extra scar tissue in them if you have a really bad injury. So that's why you still have scars. They're skin cells, but because there was such like a big injury, it adds some extra like tissue to those cells, and that's why you end up with a scar.
Can you get rid of the scar tissue?
So. There are ways that you can reduce scar tissue, but it kind of just has to go away on its own for the most part. You can get rid of it faster. So chromatin is what we call unorganized DNA. I want you to draw a picture of this in your notes, okay? So we're going to draw a cell in the nucleus. And then all you need to do is just draw a bunch of squiggly lines, and ta-da, you're an artist, okay? That's what chromatin is, a bunch of squiggles. Yep, unorganized DNA. Now, when the cell divides, it's going to wind up into chromosomes, okay? Like these little balls of yarn, okay? So during mitosis, the DNA winds up to form chromosomes so it doesn't get tangled. So go ahead and write down chromosome. Chromosome is organized DNA so that we can pull each of those chromosomes to the sides of the cell and they don't get mixed up or tangled up or anything like that. If you look at this picture, this is what a chromosome actually looks like. So it looks round. It looks like an X, but this big pot of spaghetti here, okay, it is wrapping around these little proteins, these little silver circles. These are proteins that help organize it, and eventually it makes, like we said, a big X, okay? Here's what chromosomes actually look like under the microscope, okay? Earbuds out, take it away, put it away, put it away. You see it again, I'm taking it. So this is what chromosomes actually look like, and this is a close-up, okay? So human cells have 46 chromosomes in each cell. Write that down. So 46 chromosomes each. Now, when we look at these chromosomes, what do you guys notice?
They're all different.
Okay, they look different. What else? Okay, they all look like strings. What else? They get smaller. How many are there of each one? 2. Why are there 2? Well, you get one from mom and one from dad. Okay? But the only one that doesn't have 2, these are the sex chromosomes, X and Y. If you have 2 X chromosomes, you're a girl. If you have an X and a Y, you're a boy. Okay?
Yeah.
So typically, that doesn't really happen. We'll talk about some disorders, but you can either have XX or XY.
Is that why some people have like both?
No. Not typically, no. So 46 chromosomes in each one of our cells, okay? So let's talk about your cell cycle, okay? You're like, well, what the heck is this? Well, we're going to make a pie chart. You do not need to write this down, okay? How many hours a day are in a day? 24. How many hours do you spend sleeping? Maybe like 8. Okay, so 8 hours sleeping. That's like a third. What do you do after you wake up? Okay, eat, shower, get ready, and then you go to school. How many hours are you in school? Like 8. Okay, what do you, oh, sorry, that's supposed to say school. What do you do after school? Maybe you have sports practice, dinner, homework, watch TV, and then it starts again, right? You go to sleep. So it's this circle, right? It keeps repeating. Well, the cell does something similar. It's got a pattern, okay? I need you to write this top part. The cell spends 10% of its time dividing. The rest of the time, it's doing other stuff. Just like you only spend a chunk of your time in school. The rest of the time, you're doing other stuff. Or a chunk of your time sleeping. So you can go ahead and tape this in your notebook. We're going to fill this in. This is like kind of like a pie chart. It's called the cell cycle, and it's for the cell. So the first thing that I need you to do is I need you to write an M over here on the little small part. So we'll write this M. What do you think M stands for? Mitosis. So this is when the cell is dividing. So mitosis. Cell divides. Now, when the cell is not dividing, we say it's an interphase. Okay? So the whole rest of this time is called interphase. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to, you can either color the rest of this, right? Or you can just like draw an arrow showing that from here to here is what we call interphase. An interphase has 3 different parts, okay? So it's either dividing or it's an interphase. So the 3 parts of interphase, the first part is called G1. And this is where the cell grows. Okay, it's got to grow to get ready to divide. It's got to get bigger. Okay, so the cell grows. Then we have what's called S. S stands for synthesis. If I'm synthesizing a toy truck or a shed, what am I doing? Anyone? If I'm synthesizing a truck or a shed or a puzzle, what? You're making it, right? So synthesis means to make. So this is when our DNA is copied. Okay, we're making more DNA. Reason we need to make more DNA is because if we have 46 chromosomes in each one of our cells and we divide that, well, then each cell is going to have 23. And if we divide those again, each cell is only going to have 11. And then we're only going to have 5. And we're going to get less and less chromosomes. We need to make sure they have an exact copy. So what happens is we copy all the chromosomes. So now we have 92. And then when the cell divides, we're going to have 46 in each one. The last part of the cell cycle is G2. What do you think that stands for? Growing again. So G2, cell grows. So this is what the cell spends its time doing. It grows, DNA is copied, it grows again, and then it divides, okay? And this is all it does, right? Now, some cells divide faster than other cells. Maybe this takes a day for a skin cell. Maybe it takes 20 days for a blood cell, okay? So it just depends on the type of cell, all right? So once you have that taped in your notebook, okay, you can put your stuff away.